Hello and welcome. 2023 already. That means brand new collections. Brand new collection from Mr. Tim Holtz. And today we're going to be featuring this lovely set. This is called Wood Slice. Not only are you getting these fantastic wood slices, but you are getting an alphabet as well. How about that? Now they do have some special properties. We'll be looking at that in a second. And we're going to create something like this today, so we're going to have some fun, so stick around because I've got my dies ready and I'm going to use the circular one today. There are two different ones. There's a heart and there's a circle. So these are the dies that we're talking about. This is what makes your wood slice. So it comes in 3 sections. There we are. So that's it. So we've got the outer ring, the inner ring, and finally this one. Now you'll notice that it has some embossing line in there. But not only does it emboss, you can ink that up to get a real sense of depth. So we'll show you that as well. And I'm going to bring my Tim Holtz Big Shot fold away for this. So pop the wings in. Now if you haven't used one of these before, if you're a fan of the Big Shot or the Switch or whatever, it's the same kind of thing, except this one is a space saver. So the wings fold up, obviously. You've got integral storage there as well for all your favorite go-to tools, but you get the great cut that you always get with all Sizzix machines. I'm gonna pop my platform down and take the 3 pieces of card that I need. Actually, no, I'm gonna do 2. I'm gonna do these 2 first because this is the larger one. This is my outer ring. So I'll put that face down. This is my inner ring. So we'll make a sandwich between the 2 cutting plates onto the machine and simply run it through. There we are. So we're going to mat these together eventually, and that is how they sit. Let's just get my platform out of the way, pop that over there. And one of the great things about distressing, so I mean we've seen all the techniques that you can use, all the smooching techniques and blends and so on and so forth. But when you have layers like this, multiple layers to give them some depth, it's great to add some ink around the edges. So what I've got here, I'll get my Sizzix Media Mat and we'll just roll that out there. And we'll take, so for the darker ring, I'm going to use a dark colour, and I'm using ground espresso. You can use walnut stain or even black, it doesn't really matter, but you can't really pick this up now. But when you layer it against a lighter colour, that's when the contrast really pays dividends. So we'll just get some depth, some darkness around the edge of that tree ring. Pop this back, and then the next one, slightly lighter colour, a bit of a warmer colour as well. I think I'm going to use Vintage Photo, the classic, one of the original colours, and I think, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I think it's one of Tim's favourites as well. So you can see I'm holding this at an angle. I'm not holding it flat, I'm not holding it at 90 degrees. So about 45 degrees, and that gives you a much softer edge, but you still get that lovely depth. So reapply the ink as needs be. And there we have it. Now, obviously there's a 3rd ring, there's an inner ring. That one is slightly different. I'm going to do something slightly different with that because I've got the die here. I talked about that lovely emboss detail, but one of the things that you can do, now you can use distress inks, you can use distress oxides. For this one, I'm going to use some archival ink, that's Ranger Archival, and this is coffee color. So what I'm going to do is, rather than just die cut and get the impression, I'm actually going to take a brayer. Now you can apply this straight onto the die like that, but what I'm going to do is take a bit, and you see that I'm rolling and flicking, so I get good coverage across the brayer, and then I'm actually going to apply it to that, and you can see them starting to go a bit more. Now this gives you a kind of a broken up almost like an imperfect image. But because we're working with a natural product like this, and you probably remember some of Tim's previous die sets, the labels and the tags, which have similar properties. You can ink them up. So there you go. Now that's using the brayer. Of course, if you didn't have a brayer, you could go straight onto it like that. It's entirely up to you. So that's two ways of actually doing that. Now, it doesn't look like much at present, but if I take my platform again, and we're going to put this time we're going to cut face up, like so. So there's the die on top of the first cutting plate. And I'll take my cardstock, just pop that on the top before making my sandwich. Now, we bring our machine back in and run it through. So we're getting the cut, we're also getting the emboss, but where I inked over those emboss pads, I'm going to run this through twice. You don't have to, you already get a perfect cut and emboss, but it does help slightly. And look at that. See that detail there? See how the ink has transferred from the die onto there. And it's got that lovely broken up kind of vibe. So it helps make it look a little more natural. Now, talking about making it look natural, I am going to blend around those edges, and I think I'll start off with a little antique linen. This is one of my favorite colors. It's very warm, very pale. And I'll work in circles, and you see I'm working on my media mat and just deepening the color over this lovely cream just around the edges. It's very subtle at the moment, so I'm also going to add another shade, maybe even two, see how I feel. There we are. So it's helping to blend as well those tree rings where the ink transferred across. There we are, that's looking really good, and it is starting to look much more natural as well. So let's take away the antique linen. I think I'm going to come in this time with some old paper. Now, a lot of people think that these are interchangeable as colors, but the old paper has well, as the name suggests, it has a slightly greeny tinge, and it is a bit deeper in color than the antique linen. The antique linen is a very warm color. So there we are, we'll just pick that up, and we're working from the edge in those tight circles, moving in towards the center, leaving the center devoid of ink, of course. And then last but not least, which one shall I go for? You know what, it doesn't get much love, tea dye. I love tea dye. It's one of my favorite colors. It really, and it has a lovely warmth, and it's probably named for how people used to dye parchment, documents, things like that. And it's using old tea bags or tea that has been stewed in water, and then that was used as a dye. Hence the name, and it's got that lovely color, rich, deep brewed tea. So there we are. That's perfect. Now, I've been using my distress inks. I could spritz this straight up and wipe it away, but I'm going to put it to one side for now, because you guys know all about that. And let's start putting this together. So I'm going to use some of my express glue, and I'll turn those over and apply it to the back. Just a little scribble over there. Same with this one. There we are. Now, let's try and get this. So again, we don't want it perfectly lined up. It doesn't really matter. It's lovely where it's thick in parts and thin in others. That's part of its charm. So we'll pop that one. Maybe move by there. I like that. I like the way that's working. Okay. So I'll hold that down. We'll put it to one side. That's all ready to go to accept the letters. Now, as I said, you've got these wonderful tree rings. That is great by itself. You've also got the heart-shaped one, but we're going to talk about the alphabet. Now, I was working, last Friday I was working from home, And do you know what? I didn't want to get my big machine out, so I pulled out my Sidekick. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Sidekick or if you've ever used it, but it's an absolute joy. It's almost like the baby brother of the fold-away, really. It's got this great suction foot. So it may look substantial, and you think when you turn in the handle it's going to move around, but boom, once that's down, that's rock solid. That ain't going anywhere. Really cool idea. And of course, you do get the separate plates as well. Just a fantastic little machine. And this was the first roller machine ever, the Sidekick, I think 2003, 2004, something like that. But I still have mine, I still love mine, and I use it all the time when I just want to pull something out and do a quick cut. Absolutely great. And it's a great companion. If you're on the go, if you go to a friend's house to craft, take your Sidekick along. Absolutely perfect. So I'm going to cut the letters on my Sidekick, and we are going to spell the legend True Love. So I'm going to pop these down. There we are. And this is a great alphabet which, you can use independently. You don't have to use it with the tree rings. It's just got a really cool, funky vibe, as have most of Tim's die sets. Really, really clever. Where's that U? There we are. So if you do have a die set like this, if you have these, then look at the magnetic sheets as well, because it's a great way of keeping your alphabet. The last thing that you want to happen is losing one of your precious letters. So we'll pop that on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. T-I-U-E-L-O-V. Right, I need another E. That's okay. So I'm going to put those there, sandwiched between the two plates. Pop the handle down so it's not going anywhere, and it's just a one-handed operation as well, because this is in place, because we've got the suction foot. You don't need to hold your machine down. It's absolutely perfect. Right, there we have it. And of course, when you've got little letters like this, your die pick. This is the Tim Holtz die pick. This is a godsend. So whether you're using a die brush or a die pick, it's all there, ready to go. We'll cut one more E. And we can start laying these down. So bring in my Sidekick again. Run that through. And because it's smaller, it's much quicker as well. It's a much quicker machine. You don't have far for these letters to go. There you go, all your letters cut. So there we are, a couple more letters to go. I'll just scribble a bit of my express glue onto my craft mat. And I'm just going to dip those in. It's always better to apply, when you've got die cuts like this, which are very fine, it's always better to apply them to the glue rather than the other way around. And it means you don't get any excess glue, which when you go to press them in place, it squishes out the side and it ruins your project. But there we are. We've got True Love. Now, I want to think about the background now. So let's just wipe off that excess. Because now what I'm going to do, I don't know if you guys have seen stencil film, but it's a clear film. It's milky, it's not clear exactly, but you can die cut through this and they create great stencils, especially for inking techniques, because it's very, very thin. But what I've done is I've printed this rectangle, because it fits the size of the card that I'm doing. So you can print onto it and then you can cut the stencil out of that as well. But it's an absolutely great material, as I say, if you're doing any inking whatsoever. And here's the one that I did earlier. Now you can also use a die cut rectangle, a die cut square or circle, whatever you have to hand. So you can see I just trimmed that with the scissors there. And I'm going to apply a little bit of repositionable adhesive to the back of this. So not too much. There we are, that's now ready to go. And this is my card base. And what I want to do, I want to get this kind of center. There we are. Or you can do it at a slight angle. Doesn't really matter, whatever works for you. I'm just going to press down around the edges because, of course, I use that repositionable adhesive, so that keeps it all in place for me. Right. Now, that is going to sit over that panel, but first, before I do, let's go back to my inks again, and I'm going to use my antique linen because I always go from light to dark. So this is the lighter color, and you know what, you can't see this having a big impact at the moment, but I know it's there. I can tell it's bringing that warmth to this cream cardstock, and you will see it when you lift it away. You'll see the difference it makes, but this is more for the center of this panel and the top. Remember your circle is going to sit over the top here, so you don't need to work into that part too much. Now, once I've got the warmth with the antique linen, it's now time to go. And people use different inks. They have different blends. They have preferred colors for when creating this kind of thing. You can slip in a bit of orange, you can use some crushed olive, just a little touch of it. A fossilized amber, another great color. But now we're coming in with old paper. The classic. I think this is another very early distress ink color. Another of Tim's old favorites. There we are. Now that one really does show up. Then, last but not least, I am going to take some. Oh, you know what? I think vintage photo, but I don't want it too heavy. The vintage photo. I want the warmth, but I'm being very careful. I'm taking most of it off on my craft mat, and I'm coming in quite light because I just want this around that perimeter. But I choose vintage photo because of its warmth. It's a very warm brown, whereas the walnut stain or the ground espresso, they're a much deeper, much darker color. But I'm getting that lovely warmth here. All right, ready to go. Next thing, I could spritz this to get some mottling. I'm not going to today, but I want to create, so we've got a lovely background there. That could sit there, it's going to look fine. But I am going to take one of Tim's lovely stamps. Can't remember for the life of me which set this comes from. It's one of my stash, which I always keep close to hand, and I'm going to ink it up with Pebble Beach Archival ink. Again, you could use your oxides, you could use your distress inks. It's entirely up to you. You're going to get different vibes, different effects with each. And you notice I'm not even using, because it's not that kind of a technique, so I'm applying it direct there. And that's going to create that lovely background vibe. And you know what? I think I'm going to increase just in the corners. I've made a decision. I am going to bring in a little walnut stain, and I'm going to get that a bit darker because that will improve the contrast when I remove this. But look how I'm keeping very, very close to that edge, very close indeed. So there we are, just coming into the corners. We're getting that lovely depth. There we are. Now, this is the fun part. This is the reveal. But before I do that, I'm going to take some of this lovely Sizzix 3D foam, pop it on the back, thus. So we're getting a bit of dimension in there. So it's going to stand proud. This set, to be honest with you, because given the nature of these tree rings and the way that we carve our names or the name of a loved one into a tree as we did in the past, it's ideal. Valentine season's coming up, and I mean, love is all around. It could be any time of year, but I just thought it's an ideal opportunity to show this because look what happens when we lift away that lovely stencil film. We're getting that great panel in the center there. Great use for stencil film, fantastic product. And finally, all I need to do And you notice I'm not putting it right in the center. I'm putting it slightly higher. That gives you a lovely composition. And then we'll pop that just like so. Now the other one, the one I showed you earlier, you can see that's a bit lighter and the card's a bit shorter. I've also used the heart. There we are. So there's a few options there. Now there was one other I wanted to show you. And what I did, instead of using the center tree ring die, I used an embossing folder. This was from 2022. It was in the Tim's Chapter 3 collection, and it's called Tree Rings. So rather than use the die that goes in the center, I die cut it, and then I embossed it with that tree rings, and you'll see I did a dry emboss. Now Tim's come out with so many sort of lumber and wood grain effect folders in the past. You can see I created a panel there with one of Tim's embossing with one of Tim's wood grain folders, but notice the background. Notice the background. That's called Mosaic Tiles, and that's another lovely, lovely embossing folder from Tim. And oh, there we are. I've got the packaging down here. It's called Mosaic. It's not Mosaic Tiles. It's Mosaic. But you can see how it leaves that gorgeous, gorgeous deep emboss in the background. And I got the color by dry brushing with just some matte acrylics. Really cool set. Some great embossing folders in Tim's Everyday collection. This is one of 3. I implore you to check these out. I'm so glad that I started with this die set, because it is one of our favorites here. And I'm sure you're going to be seeing a lot more from Tim's Everyday collection, from some of your favorite designers. We will be back with vlogs and blogs and so on and so forth. Be plenty of imagery as well. Go to the Tim Holtz Hub. And that's pretty much it from me. I hope you enjoy that, and I'll see you again soon.